I am Suresh Kumar, producer of the Absorb TV YouTube channel, where I talk about technology, networking, database, and programming. Now, what you see on the screen is my sister channel or domain, which supplements my YouTube channel. And this website will contain all the show notes and any additional information that could go along with my YouTube channel. So please subscribe and let's start right away for our first topic of the day. That is how to install JupyterHub. Coming up right now. Hi guys. So welcome back. So let's see what we need to install JupyterHub. So the hardware and software that I will be using are as follows. What you see on the screen. I'm going to use a Raspberry Pi 3 with 16 GB SD card. Now you don't need to use Raspberry Pi. You could use other than a Raspberry Pi. And the only caveat is when you download Ubuntu, you need to download the appropriate image. In my case, I'll be downloading the image pertaining to Raspberry Pi specific. So you want to take that into consideration. Now, if you don't have a Raspberry Pi, right, in today's world, it's difficult to get. So what you could do is you could go to eBay. Let's go to eBay. And you could probably search for Lenovo Tiny, right? So you would see a lot of hits, and make sure you buy anything, any Tiny, so long as you got a brick. Sometimes they list only the Tiny without the brick, so make sure you buy the whole package, and they will cost you anything between $30 and $70, so you can do that, right? So we need a hardware. Of course, we need an SD card. And once you download the image, Ubuntu image, remember we're going to download, let me write it down. We're going to download Ubuntu server, okay? So we're going to download the Ubuntu server image. And we need to have some kind of software to basically flash the SD card. So in my case, I will be using Vanilla Etcher. You want to download that. Here we go. This is the URL. Now don't worry about all these URLs. You don't need to write it down. I got everything in my show notes. So don't need to waste time. You also need PuTTY, right? People who do not know what is PuTTY. PuTTY is basically a software where you can SSH into Raspberry Pi. So I'm using Windows. So if you do not have PuTTY, you can go to putty.org and you can download the PuTTY software, right? Of course, you need a router, network cable, etc., 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 right? So let's dive into downloading the image, right? So the first step is you need to go to the Ubuntu web page. See, remember, I'm going to Raspberry Pi specific Ubuntu, right? Now, if you see here, there are desktop and there is a server, right? The server and there's a desktop. And I'm using the latest 22.04 LTS. You want only the server, not the desktop, because we want a headless server. We don't want, because Raspberry Pi is not very powerful, you don't want to have desktop and waste a lot of CPU time on that. So even under server, right, you got to be careful. If you have Pi 2, then Ubuntu recommends only you download 32-bit, right? Now I got Raspberry Pi 3, so I'm going to download 64-bit. So that's what I did. I've already downloaded that. It's in my download page. There it is, right? So it's already done. Then what I do is, now I'll go to Belina HR. So I'm not going to do all these things now. You can figure out how to do these things. So I'm going to flash from a file. So I point my file is basically the one I downloaded, right? Then you need to connect the SD card into some kind of SD card writer with a USB into your PC. I'm using Windows. So that will show up here. Make sure you select the USB drive. Otherwise, you'll have some problems. And you flash. So I've already done that. So I don't need to waste time doing that. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the SD card in my Raspberry Pi 3, and I'm going to connect the Raspberry Pi to my monitor with the keyboard and the mouse. Remember, you can't do an SSH right away because the software is not installed, right? So this particular thing you need to do so that you attach the Raspberry Pi with your monitor. If you have you need to also connect a mouse and a keyboard to the Raspberry Pi, and you install the Ubuntu software, right? So what I'll try to do is I'll try to take some screenshots and how I install that, because it's a very voluminous, time-consuming process, and I don't want to bore you with all the stuff, right? So let me show you some screenshots and go. Okay, so we are at a stage now where I install the Ubuntu software, and I'm not going to bore you with all the screenshots, but what I would show you is it'll go through the entire process. Remember, you are connected your Raspberry Pi with a keyboard, mouse, and also HDMI to a monitor. So it'll go through this installation process. The only thing you need to be aware of is at some point it'll ask you, hey, I'm going to install this. Is it okay? You say yes, right? So it'll go through a process. Then you would come at some other kind of window which says, hey, do you want to, select all these things? It'll have a default selection. Don't change anything. Just say OK. And it will be coming to a prompt called Ubuntu login. Don't do anything. Don't enter anything. Okay. Just wait, wait, and wait. So once you go through the process, the time you know it's finished is when you see a screen something like this, right? SSH keys, and at the very bottom you can see cloud edit blah blah finished at blah blah, right? When you see the screen, that means you're done, right? What you could do is you could disconnect your Raspberry Pi, right? Remember, I had given my username as Ubuntu and password is super 2023, something like that. So make sure you have that in your noted down somewhere. So disconnect your Raspberry Pi, connect the Raspberry Pi to Ubuntu, to the router with a network cable. So at this point moving forward, we are going to use SSH, right? We are done with connecting Raspberry directly to a monitor. So we'll be connecting via SSH. So I already done that. So first time when you do SSH using PuTTY, right, you need to give your IP address and port is 22, and you need to give your no, basically log into using your credentials, which is Ubuntu slash whatever password you gave or whatever username you used. Once you're in, the first time it will tell you, hey, it'll warn you, it is not secure, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it. Just say accept and it'll go through the process. Okay. So after that, what we are going to do is you're going to issue this command, right? It's always a good practice to update and upgrade Ubuntu as soon as it's installed. Now, mind you, this will take a long time. Okay, it might take anywhere between 20 minutes or something, right? So just fire up this command and just have a coffee, right? Come back and Python will be installed by default. So when you type in this command, you can see the Python version, right? Now let's talk about JupyterHub. See, I need to talk about Jupyter Notebook and JupyterHub. There are a lot of differences now. A Jupyter Notebook is a single user notebook, right? So installed in a Mac or a Windows machine, and it's a single user, only one person can use. A Jupyter Hub basically is a multi-user concurrent user. It's set up on a server so that multiple people can use it. Now, there's also two flavors of Jupyter Hub. One is the regular Jupyter Hub. That Jupyter Hub can scale more than 100 users, right? We are not interested in that. That's for a heavy duty installation, right? And also another problem with the regular Jupyter Hub, it takes a lot of time and commands to install that, right? So what I found is the second flavor. It is called the Little JupyterHub. That has got a lot of advantages. The only drawback is it can scale only up to 100 users. We are going to use around 50 or 60. So that's way too much, but we don't need 100 users, at least in my case. So that's okay with me. And another advantage is the Jupyter Foundation has already created a Python script which installs everything for you. So you don't need to enter multiple commands like a regular Jupyter Hub. All you need is two commands, right? And you're done with it. Okay. So let's see what it is, right? So if you go to this website, the first command you will type or issue is this one, right? So this is what I have mentioned it here. Again, you don't need to take notes. Everything will be in the show notes. So just pay attention to the video. All these things are in the show notes. The second command is this one. The only thing I did was I replace, it's very important you do this, to make sure I enter the Jupyter Hub's admin name here. You can make up any name you want. No, I just made up JAdmin, right? So I want to make sure you replace only that. That's the second script command here, right? Curl, right? See here, it says this you have to replace, right? So that's what I did here. So I chose to use JAdmin, right? And also you need to come up with the password, right? I mean, so this is the username, this is the password I'm going to use once we, right? So I've done that, okay? Now this also takes a long time, okay? It may take 10 to 15 minutes, right? Just be patient, you know? And once it is over, you will see an email screen saying it's done, right? You will really see the screen, last thing will be done, something like this, right? So in that case, that means you know the Jupyter Hub is installed, right? So in my case, I use the IP address 16, I think. I think I used this one, right? So this is where my Raspberry Pi is attached. I mean IP address, right? So let's go there. You see that? So this is actually you're looking into the Little Jupyter Hub. It doesn't tell you it's the little, but it's a Jupyter Hub. As you can see, this is the admin name which I chose. Now, Now, if you look at this, right, let's discuss about this web UI. So there's something called control panel. So let me go to the control panel, and there's something called admin. Remember, I am logged in as admin. And by the way, first time it'll ask you to log in, you go admin, and the password you can choose whatever you want. There's no default password, right? You can enter whatever password you want and make sure you remember that. Okay. So let's go to admin. As you can see, I can add users, right? So I've already added a user called John. And now I don't need to give a password. When John logs in, whatever the first password he uses, that will become his password, right? So you can add users as admin. And you can choose whether that particular user also has a role of an admin. In my case, I told John not to have an admin. So let's add a user just to give. Let's say I call Peter, right? Now I chose Peter to be the admin group. I can simply say add user, right? We're done. If you watch here, Peter is an admin role, John is not, right? So let's go back home. Let's go back to my home, go to my server, right? Now these are called kernels. You see this drop down? Kernels are nothing but an environment, right? JupyterHub basically defaults, it installs a Python kernel as a default, right? Now you could choose to use other kernels, other programming kernels. You could use the R language as a kernel. You could use Julia as another language as a kernel. You could use Perl as another language. Again, JupyterHub has listed a lot of kernels which are compatible with JupyterHub. There are a lot of languages. So you could do research on that. If there's an interest how to install Julia or R, let me know in the show notes. Please tell me if you're interested. I can make a video about it, right? So let's say I use the Python kernel, right? So I select the kernel which I want to use. So if it's Julia, you select the Julia kernel. If you want R, use the R kernel. Now you're on basically a Python client interface. So I could write Python code here, right? I could say print hello world, run. You got it. And you could save this into something hello world. You can rename this right? Now if you go back, so Python, JupyterHub calls its Jupyter nodes with a IPYNB. That's a suffix it uses, right? So this is how you use JupyterHub. Now, hopefully you found this video very useful. I really thank you for watching this video. And if any comments, please let me know. If there's any interest, furthermore, I can do it. For example, how to install the R language kernel, how to install the Julia kernel. Another thing which you might be interested, I will make video if there's enough interest on this. For example, for example, when you go to JupyterHub, it tells you it is not secure, right? Look at it. It says not secure, right? It says not secure, right? So how to secure it? And how to use, let's say you're running a server at home, you want to point, or in a web hosting company, and you want to create a domain, subdomain, let's say jupyter.john.com, whatever, right? So how do you create the domain? How to point the domain to this particular server? It may be home or some web hosting company. So how do you do that? So that and also make sure it's secure, right? So once you've done that process, you could type something like jupyter.john.com and you could see the screen, right? Let me know if you guys are interested in that video as well. So only if there's enough interest, I will make it. So we come to the end of this video, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I did. So if there are any comments, please feel free to comment below, and please subscribe, and goodbye.